Hi, my name is John. Today I'll be finishing up the replacement part for my friend's drafting table. Welcome to another episode. In this episode I'm going to finish up this replacement part for this damaged part right here. And you can see it turned out really well. There are a lot of things that I learned during this process. You'll see some mistakes that I made. Actually quite a few. The main takeaway though is I tried a technique that I read about from Tom Lipton of using hot glue on the back side that I already milled out to reduce the vibrations. That didn't work out at all. So if I were to do this again, I would abandon the approach of using taps that I'm using here and instead use soft jaws so that I could completely mill one side with the support that I had already, and then flip it over and have the same amount of support and rigidity when I mill the other side. That would have given me a much better finish. Nonetheless, I was able to get a result that I'm sure my friend will be very happy with. It just took some extra work with a file and some sanding paper. Anyway, let's head to the workshop and get started. I finished milling the first operation on here, which is a round part that has a draft to it, and it's designed to fit into this hole with the same draft. This is a couple thousandths larger, so that means it's a press fit and doesn't go in all the way. But if I take a hammer to it and hammer it down, now it's in there and it's not coming out. So that's a technique I've used before. And I can take this now, put it back in the mill, and mill the pin out of this. And that allows me to mill something thicker than I would be able to without buying thicker material and then having to remove a lot more material. After hammering this block in place, I measured it to see how wide and how much it stuck out from here to here. And then I modeled this. And the reason I modeled that is so that for the cam, in the setup, I could select that and have that be the material that it knew about so that it knows it needs to mill that away. For milling the pin, I have three operations. The first one is adaptive clearing with a 1/8 inch end mill to get rid of most of the material. Then I have a 3D contour for the first about 0.1 inches with a 1/8 inch flat end mill. And this will get rid of a lot of the material at the bottom as well as make sure it's flat along the bottom. And then I switch to a ball end mill where I start not quite touching the bottom and then move it all the way to the top. And the idea of this is that if I simulate this, you'll see that the first operation produces something that has some stair stepping and leaves some stock at the bottom. The second operation eliminates the stock at the bottom, and this doesn't actually exist, so that's fine. And it also finishes up from the very bottom to about here. The ball end mill, of course, can't finish in right here. So then we switch to the ball end mill, and that will finish the rest of it with a smooth finish. And I might this should probably be okay. I'll try this out, see how it works. I can always do some hand finishing since this is only one that I have to make. I hit the stop button because it didn't look right. I was expecting that this would be centered so that when the milling machine was cutting, it would cut evenly around both sides. And in fact it was. I came back and checked. So do you know what went wrong? Turns out I was milling from the wrong side. I put it in the wrong orientation. I had used this as the corner. So I had to go and change the XY location of the setup to be here instead of here. Once I did that, went back to the machine and everything looked fine. I'm going to try a trick that I learned by reading Tom Lipton's book. When you mill out something like this and you don't have a lot of metal around it left, you can get a lot of vibration. I'm going to be milling out the other side. So I'm going to start putting in some hot glue, which is what he suggested, to fill up the whole cavity with hot glue. And I'm going to try that out and see how it does. Using hot glue is certainly not a good idea. The hot glue stuck to the cutter and it took quite a bit of work to get it out of the cutter. So I removed the hot glue from the back side of the material, put it back in the vise, and then started over again, and now it works just fine. But of course now I don't have anything to dampen the vibration, so as you'll see soon I'm going to start getting some chatter. You can see the chatter on the right side more than on the left side. On the left side you can see it's quite smooth, but on the right side where it's sloping down, it starts to get kind of rough. And that's because it's not supported on the right side. I milled out the support on the right because the curved surface goes below where I had the material before. So this is one place where I would change the work holding in the future. I left about 10 thousandths of material on the outside. I'm using a 1/8 inch ball cutter to remove that extra 10 thousandths. And the reason I'm using a ball cutter is so that in the sloped surfaces where I have draft, I'll get a much smoother finish. The parts it's milling right now are actually not sloped, and you'll see later on, because the cutter wasn't long enough, I ended up getting some chatter on this. Here's the finished milling job, just out of the machine. If you look really closely, you can probably see some chatter marks. Yeah, you can see it right there. As a result of not having good enough work holding on this side. But on this side, as you can see, it's quite good, except for the shallow spots that I have here. I just measured them with a micrometer. And these are about 7 thousandths deeper right there than in the rest of it. So not too bad. I'm going to cut this out now, and then I think I'll take a little bit of sandpaper to it and see if I can smooth up the finish. And then the next step after this is I plan to sandblast it. So I cut it out of the block, cutting the tabs off, and then I filed the tabs away. Once I did that, then I sanded this to get rid of the tooling marks. And as you can see, except for some scratches from the coarse file that I was using, it looks really good. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to be notified of new videos, click the subscribe, and also make sure you click the bell next to subscribe, because that's how you'll be notified of new videos. See you next time.